So those are all sort of three categories of protecting yourself. That was like a big picture, super fast overview. Now I'm going to go into a little bit more detail in each of these areas. Now, of course, we live in a world of cell phones and smartphones and iPhones and Androids, and you know, kids are growing up with these things, and pretty much everyone has them now. Let's start off with laptop safety, and we'll go into cell phones. So laptop safety, first of all, you want to have a secondary keyboard. So what happens is if you're, first of all, don't have the laptop on your lap. Even though it's called laptop, it should not be on your lap. It affects sperm motility in men, and it's got fertility issues in women. So you want to have, if you can, a secondary keyboard that actually distances you from the actual radiation of the computer. So you got this portable keyboard that you can hook into your computer, so the computer's a little bit, you're not actually over it and touching and being too near the screen. We've also got radiation shields that you can get. I'll show you a slide for that. Avoid Wi-Fi routers in the home. You can just turn them off when you're not using your internet, or the other solution is to use Ethernet and just hardwire it in like they're doing in many schools in Europe. Don't use Bluetooth headsets. They're even worse than cell phones. So if you've got a headset on and it's got Bluetooth signals, you're getting a worse type of radiation. Even the signals are kind of tiny in comparison because they're right up next to your ear. They're problematic. EMF blocking pendants for cell phones. There's a variety of those you can get. I'll show you pictures of those. They're supposed to shield some of the EMF from the phone, but I wouldn't rely on that solution entirely. And don't wear your phone, as we saw in that research with the Chinese lady that was wearing the cell phone in her bra 4 hours a day. She ended up with tumor right there, and then people that have them in their pocket, and also not a good idea. And avoid car use, because what happens in the car is it's searching for the cell tower signals, and then it's just sending out beacons, and it's basically increasing the signal strength. And plus you're in a metal box, which is then amplifying the signal. So it's a really bad place to have your cell phone on and using it. A solution is just use airplane mode when you don't need to talk or use the internet or whatever. And that will prevent it from sending or receiving signals. Now, Wi-Fi precautions in particular, some kind of overview of what I just said. So just use an Ethernet cable. It's simple. Ethernet cable, you don't have this signal flying around your home all day, especially if you've got kids in the house and people needing Wi-Fi all over the house. It's kind of hard to turn off the router off and on. Definitely turn it off at night, but I would suggest just get rid of it entirely if you possibly can and use the Ethernet. That's what I do. I don't have Wi-Fi anymore in my home. When you're in a cafe, of course, you have to use that, but you don't want to spend a lot of time there. Patterns with different keyboard positions. You can see the one on the left is the worst. And when the person's got their hands over it, they've got more intensity there of radiation marked by the dark blue. And then as you see, the hands are down, it gets a bit lighter. And then the middle keyboard, the middle there position indicating a farther away keyboard, there's less radiation. And then there's a third option on the right. But, you know, that's all to say using the external keyboard is a good idea. Now, radiation that's coming from your laptop, aside from the Wi-Fi that you need to connect with the internet, you've actually got heat radiation, which is why one reason itself, don't put it on your lap. You've got radio frequency radiation coming from the computer. So again, don't put it on your lap. And then you've got extremely low frequency radiation. So you've got these three different types of radiation coming from the laptop itself. There is something called a defender shield you can use under the computer, which blocks all emissions for complete protection. So this is a great find, a defender shield. Combine that with the fact that you have a remote keyboard and no Wi-Fi, and you're much more protected when you're doing computer work that involves the internet. So let's look at smartphone precautions. Airplane mode, very simple, just turn your airplane mode on when you don't need to be receiving calls or doing internet or whatnot. There's what some of these pendants look like. Some of them are round, some of them are square. You just kind of tack them on, and they're meant to do a certain amount of shielding. But again, I wouldn't rely on that as your full solution. I would want to sort of distance yourself from the radiation or turn it off when not in use. There's another solution. We mentioned don't use Bluetooth headsets. You can use headsets that are called air tubes. And what happens is there's no electromagnetic energy coming into your ears at all. And you can see here the whole setup. You've got the mobile phone, which does emit RF radiation when it's on, but then it goes into a shielded cable, which prevents faradic currents. And then that then goes into the air tube headphones you see in the middle. Now notice the speaker lower to your screen, the speaker, that's set away from your brain, so it's not going to be, it's isolating the EMF. So that's the only part that sort of has an issue. And then you look at the top, you've got the anti-drop earbud, ergonomic design, and so forth. So it's an air tube. You're not putting radiation in your ear. The cables are shielded, and then the speaker itself is away from the brain. So this is a good solution. So we talked about smartphones, laptops, Wi-Fi routers. Let's go to another category, home precautions. First of all, turn off appliances you're not using. People think, well, what's the big deal with appliances? They're not like sending out big amounts of radiation. Well, don't forget, all your appliances use electricity, and they all have different sort of energetic signatures. And remember, with the dirty electricity, this stuff starts to accumulate and add up. So turn off appliances that are not being used. Your stove's not being used, it's off. In terms of the fridge, that's kind of got to be on, but there's a lot of other stuff that doesn't have to be. Safeguard your bedroom from, in other words, from EMF devices or anything that can emit EMF signals, like phones or cordless phones, anything like that. Avoid certain types of lighting like halogen fluorescent tubes and what's called energy efficient compact fluorescent lighting. So avoid those types of lighting. They're not healthy for us. Then I'm going to show you something called an EMF bed canopy, which can almost completely shield your sleeping area. Amazing discovery for me personally a few months ago. So I was pretty blown away to find out about that. There's something called Y-Shield paint. It's a sort of EMF shielding paint that you can paint all your walls and rooms. This is really taking it to the next level, but I just thought I'd let you know about that. And then finally, for the dirty electricity, there's something called Stetzer filters to remove your dirty electricity. There is sort of a shot of what it looks like to paint your rooms, your walls with this sort of shielding paint. This is called GeoVital T98 Alpha. You have to ground the paint actually to the sockets, to the ground in the electrical sockets. So it's quite an endeavor. It's not an easy thing to do. But if you just want to go next level of protection in your house, that's how you can do it. So shield your sleep space. This is called a canopy, an EMF canopy. So I'm just going to actually, let's put on a video for that.
If you live in an urban or suburban environment, chances are that you live near a cell phone tower. And if that's the case, this is how much wireless pollution you are exposed to. The medical doctors and biologists around the world are starting to realize that the maximum amount of wireless pollution that we want to continuously be exposed to is a 5 on this device. And as you can see, we're normally over 100 and sometimes over 200. So if that's the case, one of the best things you can do is to get a net like this, which blocks about 99% of the wireless pollution from you while you sleep. This is particularly important for children because we simply do not know what the long-term health effects are of wireless pollution. What we do know is that it affects melatonin production, which affects the quality of our sleep. It also creates oxidation stress in our cells. So as you can see, when we're underneath the net, the amount of wireless pollution goes down considerably. So one of the most important things you can do for your health is to sleep under a net like this.
So let's talk about filtering your dirty electricity. As I mentioned, so you've got clean electricity, you can see that kind of signal there, right? This other signal is superimposed, right, from all the different appliances, the background radiation, the RF signals. You attach a filter here. This is the whole concept of dirty electricity and how you can first measure what your signals are.
Okay, we're here today looking at dirty electricity, also known as high-frequency voltage transients, on an oscilloscope. The oscilloscope is plugged into this power strip, and the power strip is plugged into the wall. So these 2 meters here they're called Graham-Stetzer meters, and they've been used in many peer-reviewed studies. They measure high-frequency voltage transients. So we're going to plug in the first one, and this is normally adequate for going up to 2,000. But we're going to find out it quickly maxes out. And so that means we have over 2,000. Now it might be interesting to notice that 25 is safe, 50 is the maximum in many countries around the world, and at 75 or greater, the electricity radiating off the wires in the form of a high static charge, it goes internal to the human body, and that's where it causes problems. This meter here is an X10 meter. It goes up to 20,000. We're going to plug it in and see what we find out. Well, actually, we find out it maxes out and it goes over 20,000. And this is one of the dirtiest environments I've seen in over 4 years of measuring electricity. I'm going to reduce the gain on the oscilloscope so we can get a slightly better picture. And we can see here we're getting over 12 volts coming through of this dirty electricity. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to take one of these Graham-Stetzer filters, and it was developed by Dr. Martin Graham and David Stetzer, and we're going to put it into the same power strip here, and I want you to see the huge reduction in the dirty electricity on the 2 meters and the oscilloscope. Okay, so we went from over 20,000 down to 128. We can clean this up further by putting another filter into the wall socket. Your goal is to get it to 50 or less. And if we cleaned up the entire environment, you'd find out that, yeah, we can make it livable. Of course, this is money you have to spend. It's been calculated that it takes anywhere between, 300 to 600 to clean up a house. Maybe 3,000 depending upon the size of the house. This is money you have to spend that the utility isn't going to help you with to clean up the problem that they're delivering. Now take a look over here at the oscilloscope. With the filters in place, you have clean power. Take the filters out of the circuit, immediately the power gets dirty and dangerous again. This means this is an extremely hazardous environment for your dogs, your cats, your children, you, your unborn child. You do not want to be exposed to this. Once again, these are Graham-Stetzer meters. This is a very simple oscilloscope, and this is a special filter. We're going to plug the filter in one more time so that you can see how easy it is to clean up your electricity. Now these meters plug right into a wall socket. It's as easy as plugging in any kind of device.
Let's continue. So that's a picture of the Stetzerizer microsurge meter. So to measure the signals, as he pointed out, they were far higher than they should be, way beyond the safety limits. And there's the actual filters themselves, Graham-Stetzer filters that you can get. And there you see them plugged in, 2 of them plugged in there. You'd need to put them at different places in your home. Now here's a comparison. There's a different kind called green wave filter, and they do some comparisons here. I guess they're trying to say that they're better than Stetzerizer. The green wave is grounded, the Stetzerizer is not, and so forth. So you can check that out yourself, the green wave and the Stetzerizer. Now, green wave filters, according to them, remove erratic microsurges of energy from wiring, helping to normalize electrical current to 50-60. Now, they all do that, but this is just a different brand. So now let's look at another category of protection. There's specific categories of crystals, some of which are actually grounding and shielding. Particularly, you want to use what's called ferromagnetic stones. That they have the iron content in it. Lodestone or magnetite, hematite, pyrite, those are all so-called ferromagnetic stones. In fact, you don't want to use silicate type crystals like quartz and opal because they can actually amplify the EMF signals, the damaging effects. So you got to be careful on that. Black tourmaline, the third one down, turns out to be really, really helpful in this capacity. It can transmute energies because it combines 2 properties, piezoelectric and pyroelectric. Piezoelectric and pyroelectric. So these are 2 different types of properties. So it's a very powerful crystal. And I'm going to talk about shungite. Very, very, very amazing substance. It was discovered in Russia, Karelia, Russia. It's considered to be 2 billion years old, and it's also considered a cure-all. And here's an important thing to note. In many cultures, all of these crystals that I've mentioned, they're also considered grounding. So what's considered grounding is often good for EMF protection. So there's obviously a link there. Now, shungite as I mentioned, considered close to 2 billion years old. It's 98% carbon, and it comes from ancient organic remains. That's where it's derived from. It purifies water, it's an energy conductor, and it's an EMF shield. You can see the healing properties below. It grounding, it balances the root chakra, it's cleansing and purifying. People use it to purify water. It's protecting and shielding from electromagnetic frequencies. It transmutes or protects from negative energies. It's immune boosting. It also is known to soothe insomnia and relieve anxiety, and that's just a subset of its properties. So that might be something to check out. Now, something we can do also in this capacity is grounding. So we're talking about shielding with crystals and grounding. Earth frequencies are good for you. So you want to do something called earthing, putting your feet in the earth. Obviously, it's easier in this climate to do that sort of in the summer, spring, and fall. Walking in nature, being near trees, being near rushing water, being outside after rain showers, all that stuff's, you're getting more negative ions. It's grounding. It's healthy. We all know that being in nature is good, but it's good for grounding. It's good for kind of detoxifying a bit from the EMFs. There's something called EMF grounding mats, which David Wolf endorses, and he actually uses them at his events. He says if you're going to be inside a building or a house or a government cubicle, and you can't easily take off your shoes and walk outside on earth, well, then use EMF grounding mats. It really does protect against some of the stuff, toxic signals we're being exposed to. The Schumann resonance is the naturally occurring resonance in the planet between the Earth and the ionosphere. It's really healing. We need it. Turns out that astronauts were in space for several days and weeks, got sick because they didn't have the Schumann resonance, so they had to simulate it in space. So that's very important. They used to create these had these Schumann watches back in the day, 7.83 hertz. And now we find the Schumann frequencies have risen almost up to 40 hertz. So there's a whole range of it. It's not just one particular frequency, it's a range of frequencies. So just an overview, natural ways to reduce the dangers of EMFs. Don't carry a cell phone in your pocket or bra. Avoid using a laptop on your lap. Use a separate keyboard. Use a radiation shield. Avoid Bluetooth headsets. Use those air tube type headsets. We just mentioned earthing. It's very grounding. And take a barefoot walk on the grass or the beach or the earth. Protect your home. Unplug appliances. Keep your bedroom clear of EMF emitting devices. Avoid halogen or fluorescent lighting. Turn off Wi-Fi as much as possible or unplug it completely and use Ethernet cables. Now, we're getting towards the end. Antioxidant production. So we've got too many free radicals in our body, and that we can get more of them because we're exposed to EMFs and other stressful things. Here's some superfoods which are high in antioxidants. There's the ORAC value. When you look at the ORAC value, the higher that is, the more the antioxidants. So we've got pecans, pomegranates, rosemary. Rosemary is good for stimulating alertness and cognition. Asparagus, blueberries. Blueberries are amazing. Walnuts, good for the brain, healthy fats. Prunes, broccoli considered a superfood. Cinnamon does many things, among them reduces blood pressure. Dates, cilantro, holy basil. Cilantro is quite amazing too. You want to get your omega-3 fatty acids in whatever way you can because we're getting too many omega-6s. Noni fruit, spirulina, and chlorella, they're both good. Complete proteins and full of nutrients, and then vitamin D3, very important. You want to upgrade that during the winter and find other ways to get lighting if there's not as much sun where you live. Finally, detoxing your body. I discovered this very interesting recipe. If you're familiar with Epsom salts or magnesium salts, they're okay, but I would go for Himalayan salts or sea salts if you can. Okay, but this one actually combines everything. It's got Himalayan, it's got magnesium. So you want a pound of Himalayan sea salt. So this is a detoxing bath, right? This is meant to actually detoxify you from the effects of electromagnetic exposure. So Himalayan or sea salt, a pound of baking soda, 1 to 2 tablespoons of something called ionic magnesium concentrate. It's got trace minerals as well as magnesium. Very hot water, as much as you can stand without burning yourself, and 1 tumblestone each of what are called serpentine and rhodonite. These are actually magnesium-containing minerals that are safe in your bath. And then when you take the bath after, don't dry off. Just rub down with magnesium oil. It's very healing to have magnesium oil or spray in itself. So if you do this, this could be a pretty potent combination. So try that out. You might want to research that, check out that recipe, and something you could do once a week, for instance. So let's do a quick overview. What did we talk about today? At home, you want to turn off appliances not being used. See if you can look into EMF canopies if you can afford it, because that night is when your brain is doing a lot of cleansing. It's rejuvenating you. It's consolidating learning and memories. And it would probably do that much better if you had a way to filter out the EMFs at night. Remove halogen or fluorescent tube lighting. In terms of laptops, get an external keyboard. Turn off your Wi-Fi routers as much as possible. Ideally, get rid of it altogether and just use Ethernet if you can hardwire it. And get a laptop shield that you put under your laptop to get rid of those various types of radiation that this laptop emits. Smartphones or cell phones, use airplane mode as much as possible when you don't need to use the phone. Air tube headsets. Headsets protects you from the electromagnetics coming into the ears. And definitely avoid those Bluetooth headsets. Use air tube headsets. You can use EMF pendants on the back of your phones. Now, dirty electricity, we just talked about that. There's the green wave filters or the Stetzer, Graham-Stetzer filters that completely cleans up the electricity in your home. Put your feet on the earth, walk on the grass. There's those shielding, grounding crystals. Shungite is especially powerful. And then the EMF mats David Wolf recommends and others. Now, finally, detox. We talked about 2 ways you can do that. Antioxidant foods, getting rid of free radicals or reducing them in the brain and body. And then that magnesium sea salt bath recipe.